Hello and welcome to today's webinar. On behalf of European Pharmaceutical Review and Abbott Informatics, I'd like to thank you all for attending. I'm your moderator, Nikki Withers, and I'm the editor of European Pharmaceutical Review. Today's speaker will be Tamara McKenna. She's the Sales Executive and Accounts Manager at Abbott Informatics. Following the presentation, we'll move on to a live question and answer session where you can pose questions to today's speaker. Please remember you can submit questions at any point during the webinar using the questions panel in the menu on the right. So without hesitation, may I pass you over to today's keynote speaker, Tamara McKenna.
All right, everybody, thank you and welcome. Thank you for introducing me, Nikki. I would like to just do a small representation of myself. For those of you that can hear, my accent probably sounds slightly unfamiliar, and that is that I am actually South African. I have been living in the United Kingdom for the past 4 years. After graduating from university with an honours degree in chemistry, I spent some time working in a laboratory in a hydrometallurgical processing facility involved in mining research. Thereafter, I moved into the LIMS industry, where I have been working for the past 18 plus years. Initially, I was involved in a series of implementations before I moved into a business sales role. And I have been involved in implementations in a very diverse range of industries, everything from pharmaceuticals to mining and technology and veterinary and diagnostics. So my experience is that I have worked in laboratories just like yours and really do understand the challenges that are being experienced from day to day. The FDA was perhaps understating a point when it stated in its April 2016 draft guidance that data integrity and compliance with cGMP, that the increasing number of data integrity related violations identified during its inspections was troubling. And troubling is in fact a very poignant use of word, because 21 of the 28 warning letters that were issued by the agency during 2015 and May 2016 involved data integrity issues in drug manufacturing. Ultimately, whether you are a drug manufacturer, clinical research organization, or a pharmaceutical R&D company, FDA compliance, as well as the accuracy and completeness of data, is critical for safe product development, and any breach in data integrity can have serious implications for human health. In most cases, non-compliance is not really the result of overt misconduct, but stems from inadequate or poorly managed or implemented procedures, ineffectual computer system security. At this point, think about the concept of shared logins and permissions, or more so, poor understanding to and adherence of internal processes, practices, SOPs, and controls, and what data integrity is. During this webinar, we will continue to clarify the role of data integrity in good current manufacturing, cGMP, for drugs, as is required by 21 CFR Parts 210, 211, and 212. We will also discuss how a LIMS, such as STARLIMS, can aid your compliance efforts and enhance the value of your data. Considering the agenda, we will take ourselves through a journey at considering what data integrity is, why data integrity is important, what it is relating to cGMP records, looking at the requirements for data integrity, why would we consider Abbott Informatics, and then the journey from a manual to fully automated process, and how a LIMS can aid you with your compliance and increase the value of your data. Why is data integrity important? The FDA expects that all data be reliable and accurate. The FDA's Q&A style draft guidance serves as a starting point for FDA compliance to give the manufacturing sector a push in the right direction to avoiding compliance regulation issues and ensuring data integrity. One key sentence in the draft guidance sums up what companies should remember. It states quite clearly that when generated to satisfy a cGMP requirement, all data becomes a cGMP record. In other words, every piece of data counts. Drug manufacturers must take this basic tenet on board if they are really fully to meet cGMP. It is the role of management with executive responsibility to create a quality culture where employees understand that data integrity is an organizational core value, and employees are encouraged to identify and promptly report data integrity issues. In the absence of management support of a quality culture, quality systems can break down and lead to cGMP non-compliance. So what strategies should companies put in place to make sure they are cGMP and FDA compliant with regulatory requirements and keep data integrity a priority? Ongoing training is an absolute must, along with promoting an enterprise-wide philosophy that encourages the establishment of risk-based strategies and policies to meet cGMP or GCP imperatives from the ground up. Data integrity is ultimately everybody's responsibility. So what could happen if your business does not maintain its data integrity? For manufacturers, the repercussions may include production stoppages, distribution and import bans, regulatory approval delays, and product recalls. Manufacturers and CROs who are found to be in violation of cGMP and/or FDA compliance may also lose the trust and goodwill of the regulators and could face increased scrutiny through more frequent and in-depth inspections. Personal and corporate prosecutions are becoming more and more commonplace. All of the consequences that are listed here, such as consumer complaints and product recalls, equate to a loss of revenue and ultimately put your business's future at risk. No matter what business you are in, your main aim is to ensure products are safe or the testing service that you provide is completely accurate. Data integrity is fundamental in ensuring laboratory results are accurate. Very cost of non-compliance. Would we like the cost of non-compliance? Let me list a few examples of one global manufacturer in 2015 is that they received an FDA warning letter and an import ban that then related to two of its facilities. The estimated cost was somewhere between 148 and 178 million US dollars. The company's exports dropped by almost 50 million US, and the costs that were then associated with remediation and write-down were expected to be somewhere between 40 and 70 million. In another example, between 2013 and 2015, a manufacturer received an import ban relating to two of its facilities. Ultimately, there was a product recall of all of its US-based products. The associated costs were projected to be in excess of 900 million US dollars, including revenue losses of 700 million, and really, they had a market capitalization loss of in excess of 2.3 billion. A warning letter received by a further manufacturer in 2015 led to a previously FDA-approved innovator drug being completely withdrawn and relocation of a generic production. The total costs were estimated to be in the hundreds of millions, with remediation costs and write-downs projected to be around 40 million US dollars. What we can see, though, is that the underlying premise of 21 CFR Parts 210 and 212 is that cGMP sets forth minimum requirements to assure that drugs meet the standards of the FD&C Act regarding safety, identity, strength, quality, and purity. The requirements with respect to data integrity in Parts 211 and 212 include, amongst other things, the statement that it is required that the backup of data be exact and complete, be secure from alteration or inadvertent loss or erasure, and that the output from a computer be checked for accuracy. 212 also goes on to say that data needs to be stored to prevent deterioration, and furthermore, that documentation at the time of performance, as well as laboratory controls being scientifically sound. We need to ensure that all records are in fact original and that complete information along with the record storage is maintained. So what is data integrity as it relates to a cGMP record? For the purposes of the FDA, data integrity in fact refers to the completeness consistency, and accuracy of all data. Complete, consistent, accurate data needs to be attributable, legible, contemporaneously recorded, it needs to be original, and it needs to be accurate. This leads us to the acronym ALCOA. Attributable really means is the data or the result traceable to a person with a correct date and time. Legible is that is the information clear and can it be read? And this includes whether or not you are maintaining this on paper, in which case you need to ensure that it's correctly recorded, easily written down, and written in a permanent pen. Contemporaneous is really important because you need to be able to prove that your results were completed in the correct manner, when it was recorded, and the date and time against who and how this was entered, not backdated or after the fact. Original is quite obvious because we need to know that it was the first time data was recorded and that there aren't other copies of this data lying around from which it may have been transcribed. And accurate are all of the details maintained herein correct. It is critical that the source completely reflects the true result. If a change needs to be made, modification must be done in a compliant manner. We must never overwrite data. Data integrity is absolutely critical throughout the cGMP data lifecycle, including the creation, modification, processing, maintenance, archival, retrieval, transmission, and deposition of data after the record's retention period may end. System design and controls should be easy so that you are able to detect errors, detect omissions, look for abnormal results throughout the data's entire life cycle. So when we consider data integrity requirements, what do we really need to look for? You might be aware, as I've previously mentioned, of the concept of ALCOA. The ALCOA acronym is actually used to summarize the critical criteria for ensuring data integrity, whether or not that information is based on acceptable paper or electronic records. Let me try to explain each one and look at it briefly at how a LIMS may help you to achieve the expectation. Attributable means who performed a particular action and when. All data entered into the LIMS can be attributed to the user logged in at the time. Changes made in the system can be configured to require an electronic signature with a reason if required. Obviously, legible means can the record in fact be read? If we are talking about handwriting, this can be a little sketchy sometimes. All records are readable and permanent once recorded in the LIMS. This means that they cannot be altered without triggering an audit trail. An added bonus is that all information entered into the LIMS is typed or captured from other systems, so the legible part becomes much easier to maintain. Contemporaneous, although it may be a tough word to say, simply means was the result recorded at the exact time of capture. Using a LIMS, this is the only way to guarantee you can meet this requirement. All testing that is performed within a LIMS will have an automatic date and timestamp attached to each record, turning on the audit trail. Original is that is this a true copy, or does this record, this is the first time this record was recorded. Instrument interfacing to a LIMS removes transcription error points and ensures records are original. Accuracy requires that no editing be performed without it being documented. This is exactly what a LIMS is able to address out of the box. So why do we consider Abbott Informatics? An infrastructure to support laboratory compliance throughout an entire product life cycle. Abbott Informatics has developed its STARLIMS Laboratory Informatics Management System as a configurable, enterprise-wide GCMP, GCP, and FDA compliance-featured data management infrastructure that underpins all laboratory data collection, management, reporting across R&D, clinical, and the manufacturing sectors. Designed to handle complex workflows and processes the platform ensures that validated protocols for processes and data acquisition and management are followed for all procedures in the manufacturing, quality control, and clinical research type laboratories. STARLIMS is designed to support Alcoa obligations and facilitate process standardization. The platform interfaces with enterprise systems and integrates with analytical and measurement instrumentation to automate data collection, archiving, reporting, and minimize the possibility of unintentional transcription errors or the loss of data which may happen when you have a paper-based recording system. So why do we choose Abbott? Not only as your LIMS vendor, but in fact your business partner. Abbott Informatics' commitment to quality is unprecedented in the field of laboratory information management systems, that is LIMS. Abbott Informatics quickly ascended to a leadership role in quality by obtaining actual certification as an ISO 9001 compliant from the prestigious BSI certification organization. Abbott Informatics then raised the bar even further to an unprecedented level by obtaining ISO 13485 certification from BSI. And what this means is that our applications, our systems, are held to the stringent standards of medical devices. And so for our customers, the commitment to quality is manifested in a strict adherence to the ISO 13485 requirements in our software systems, our management processes, our customer service, our issue resolution processes, virtually every aspect of our business. Abbott Informatics' unparalleled investment in quality means that our current and prospective customers rest assured that quality is our guiding principle. It is the heart of our business and the heart of the way in which we manage to look after our customers. Moving on to our next slide, we continue and consider the manual laboratory processes and workflows. And this is really where we start to look at moving from the manual to an automated process, from the paper-based technology, paper-based solutions to electronic-based technology platforms. Looking in a manual laboratory process, there are many challenges that need to be overcome. Of course, there are multiple points for transcription errors, and transcription errors always equate to inefficient processes. It can also be very difficult to interpret one person's handwriting, and if you're working on a worksheet, often those worksheets can have limited spaces for correction. The worst thing about a manual process is that it is heavily reliant on the analyst actually being correct. And they say that for human error, every 1 in 5 points that a human writes down has the chance for error contained in it. It is, of course, completely time-consuming, and the risk of paperwork being lost or damaged is exceedingly high. Most importantly, though, it's really difficult to prove in a paper-based system that the result that you recorded is contemporaneously done. Now we consider, how does a laboratory information management system aid your compliance? Moving on to our next slide, we look at the following concepts. In a quality control setting, laboratory staff who are under pressure to reduce delays might actually opt to repeat sample retesting until they get the desired result that they want. Or even worse, they may fail to report or investigate an out of specification or anomalous test result. Sometimes violations of good practice and non-adherence to healthcare compliance regulations, whether it be in a clinical or manufacturing environment, may simply be due to the continued use of outdated or unqualified electronic systems. Some of the examples where LIMS can help you to achieve Alcoa expectations include full sample traceability, the complete automatic audit trail, and having compliant controls on access to the system. It is important that a LIMS is compliant with even the most stringent 21 CFR Part 11 requirement set out for the pharmaceutical products, as these provide you with controls on the data, such as electronic signatures. It is critical that you can show your sample genealogy right from the point of receival to the final throughput and a certificate of analysis, including any grandchild, child, grandparent, etc. relationships. In terms of meeting Alcoa expectations, and we consider where the LIMS can help you, When you look at attributable, all data as it entered into the LIMS is attributed to the user that may be logged into the LIMS at the time. Changes can also be made to be configured so that when a change is entered, an electronic signature and an associated reason are triggered. Legible records are always readable in a LIMS. That is, as soon as it goes in, you can read it. Contemporaneously recorded is the fact that as soon as you perform an action at any point in the life cycle or testing process, you are able to date and timestamp and attach that record by turning on the audit trail. And that is at every point in the actual workflow, not just the point where you are dealing with particular sample test or results information. It can be all the associated meta information along with the testing process. Instrument interfacing removes transcription error points, such that we can prove the originality of any information. And LIMS can also be configured to build in accuracy checks on the data. When we consider our next slide, we start to look at the process of moving from manual to automation. Increased volumes of data, coupled with an increase in the complexity of that data, are best addressed when you consider fully integrated solutions. The STARLIMS integrated solution eliminates the need to develop and manage multiple costly informatics interfaces from a number of partners. When we look at the screen and we consider on the far left, the LIMS is our key application, the Laboratory Information Management System, but we have a fully integrated scientific data management system, electronic lab notebook that work within the STARLIMS application. Further to that, we're able to enhance the LIMS, SDMS, and ELN usage by taking this and moving it into a mobile platform so that you're able to have information on the go. On top of this, once you're able to develop all this information within your application, you need to be able to know that you can make informed business decisions based on the data sitting in your application. And this is where the STARLIMS integrated advanced analytics application comes into play. It allows you to take your data and turn it into real value. STARLIMS supports, as is expected, our perpetual on-site premise implementations, but we also fully support the cloud-based application where people are moving to. That is that we are able to look at a hosted solution and a fully cloud-based subscription solution. And more than that, looking at all of the implementation and configuration provision that we make to our customers, we have an application where we have a content library of pre-configured, reusable, advanced analytics dashboards that our customers are able to plug and play into the solution to immediately gain value from the information sitting in their database. When we consider the automation processes, there are a number of things we should look at. One of them is the adoption of electronic signatures. Adopting 21 CFR Part 11 compliant electronic signatures instead of handwritten signatures is not only more efficient, but it also prevents the possibility of anyone backdating a record. Electronic signatures also result in a more complete audit trail than a manual signature. STARLIMS allows users to configure, with individual actions being required, an electronic signature, a password, a comment, and a witness, or any combination of these elements as they may be required. This means that critical healthcare compliance regulations can be fully documented. Enforcing strong password policies is an absolute key. The best practice in password management is set by some standards to prevent attack on the system and also to prevent unauthorized manipulation of any of the data. STARLIMS supports the creation, enforcing, and documentation of strong password policies. An organization is creating at this point its first line of defense in the protection of data integrity for its organization. We have a full user management application that supports the best practice in password management and allows you to configure content, length definition, failed attempt lockouts, password expirations, and of course, reuse restrictions on those passwords. It's important where the FDA is also concerned that we delineate user roles. Well, what do we mean by this? The FDA suggests that system administrator roles, including any rights to alter files and settings, be assigned to personnel that are independent from those responsible for record content. In addition, there may be many workflow scenarios where it is in fact essential from a data integrity perspective to ensure that result reviews for release are completed by a person other than the individual who may have entered the data. By clearly defining and assigning user roles, each user can have a tailored workflow that maintains healthcare compliance and regulations without manual intervention. STARLIMS allows for an unlimited number of user role definitions and gives complete control of task management by either role, user, organization, site, or any combination of these potential parameters to provision for the delineation of user roles. Where the FDA is concerned, train, and retrain. You cannot train enough. Create safeguards and establishing preventative measures and support for data integrity will only be effective if they are actually known and understood by laboratory staff. Such is a key question that your laboratory staff should in fact be asking, well, what is data integrity? Training is one task that is often overlooked, and the FDA inspectors frequently uncover this as a deficiency during their inspections. An effective training program will not only close the gap, but will also reinforce policies and procedures on an ongoing basis. STARLIMS provides online tools to schedule employee training programs and monitor completion by each of the employees. Individual certification records can, in addition, be tied to specific test workflows for each employee, which then strengthens the laboratory's commitment to data integrity, to quality, and importantly, to FDA compliance. It's important also to consider self-inspection. The results of an FDA inspection should never come as a surprise. Conducting regular mock inspections will allow management to identify for improvement the areas before a next inspection. The time and effort invested in a self-inspection is a fraction of what may be required for a remediation following an FDA warning. STARLIMS provides full traceability and full audit trail records from an individual test level to an overall site and organizational level. In addition, data integrity can be monitored real-time via role-specific analytical dashboards, bringing into a point the advanced analytics tool previously mentioned, which can also be used for an investigational tool if required. It's important to look at creating data manipulation SOPs. And what do we mean by this? A significant number of FDA citations involve inadequate documentation that relate to the handling of raw data from an instrument, laboratory notebook, or any other data that is used prior to final reporting. The creation of an SOP to address these situations provides guidelines that assist an analyst in exercising good judgment when manipulating raw data and provides a method for documenting any changes that may be required. And this is where the integrated STARLIMS ELN comes into play. The ELN supports QA/QC type laboratories and R&D labs in ensuring SOP methods being followed to ensure that a workflow step-by-step process is achieved. STARLIMS provides access to the laboratory's SOP directly from a corresponding workflow, so the analyst has the information that they need at the time that they need it, without having to search through manual binders, or even worse, not referring to the SOP at all because the SOP was not in fact conveniently available. We should also look at the difference between an interface and an integration. A software interface is a bridge that allows two programs to share information with each other. However, software integration means that the product works as one solution. As you can see by the picture displayed on your screen, the integrated solution provided by STARLIMS satisfies just this. It provides business transformation in an integrated solution. So it's not just an interfacing of business processes, but it provides integration between the laboratory equipment and systems, and will help you to maximize data security and produce efficient workflows, ensuring that you also minimize risk of manual data entry. When we start to consider the automated processes, there are a number of tools that come into play. Looking on the screen here is an example of using the STARLIMS integrated ELN in method execution. And in the execution of the methods, what we consider here is that there is a step-by-step process that will be followed. to ensure data integrity, mostly from a contemporary aspect, is completely maintained for both simple and complex testing processes. We'll move on to the next slide. What we would consider is instrument interfacing. The instrument interfacing portion removes transcription errors, okay, and it removes the error or the chance for human error to be introduced into a result. The options for interfacing within STARLIMS are in fact unlimited, and we often say we are not limited by what we can speak to. We're able to interface to any instrument or any application that makes themselves interfaceable by supporting a concept of interoperability. At this point, we also look at the STARLIMS integrated scientific data management tool, and we use this often as a tool for interfacing to complex applications. Moving on, we consider the audit trail. And at this point, it's important to understand, looking at your screen as an example, the audit trail allows you to capture all changes to every record in the application, including a date and timestamp and who performed the action and when. And this is not just particular to sample test and result type fields. It's every part of the LIMS application has an audit trail created behind it. When we move on now to our next slide, what we consider is really the automation. Previously, I mentioned how looking at manual process was both time-consuming and onerous. When we're moving into the automated processes, we start to look at real time and money savings. And where we see this is that we have the removal of double data handling. It allows us to capture information directly from instruments or instrument files into the LIMS. It importantly removes transcription checking. It reduces the amount of rework. And importantly, we are going to be saving some trees. By having an automated system, you really greatly improve your laboratory's right first time statistics. Moving on to the next slide, we consider what we mean by this. A right first time statistic is how many times do we need to repeat a test before we think we're going to get the results we're trying to achieve. STARLIMS not only aids in your compliance and supports your data integrity requirements, but it also produces real money savings and time savings for your organization, essentially allowing your scientists to get on with the science. We look at savings with regard to sample login, with regard to reporting, your QA and QC management, sample tracking and chain of custody in terms of the movement of samples within different parts of the organization, and other parts where we consider potentially contract tracking or workload management. So how do we enhance the value of your data? Well, when we look at the audit benefits, we consider that during an audit, STARLIMS provides the following features. It is a LIMS that provides accurate, complete, and consistent data rapidly at the time of an audit. It is important, often when in a laboratory, the word audit is thrown around, usually with not very much warning, people start to run around the lab, literally trying to clean the lab, remove expired reagents, and try to get themselves sort of, in check for this potential spot audit they're about to undergo. Well, obviously, STARLIMS is never going to be able to clean your laboratory for you, but it's certainly going to help you to maintain records of all the other parts, including management of your standards and reagents, monitoring of inventory and stock requirements. And the audit trail allows you to be able to prove that all the data collected and maintained in your application is accurate and integral. Discrepancies can be managed using the STARLIMS Investigation Manager, and STARLIMS has a full equipment management application to manage everything related to the equipment, from your preventative maintenance, your QC, your batch QC controls, and anything related to the instrument being used in a testing profile. Looking at the value of your data and moving further, we consider the STARLIMS Advanced Analytics application that I mentioned earlier. Advanced Analytics is an integrated tool within STARLIMS that allows you to do real-time data mining and drill down on all the information sitting in the LIMS database. Of course, I've mentioned the idea of this right first time and manual peak integrations, but the importance and really the focus of the Advanced Analytics is being able to take value from your data. And what do we mean from that? previously in historic trends has been being able to look back on data and make reactive decisions. But what the advanced analytics tool is allowing you to do is to move from the point of being reactive to currently proactive, but in fact, being able to use the advanced analytics dashboard to be predictive in anything in terms of what your information is showing you. So rather than reacting to a potential outlier or problem you pick up in your information, it allows you to predict based on historic trends where that information is showing something that might happen in the future and prevent that from happening. Moving on to our next slide, we consider acting on your information. As an example here, you look at turnaround times of information in your laboratory. It's really important to be able to act on the speed or efficiency with which you're able to produce information regarding a particular testing workflow, but also it allows us to look at the success rate of a working group within a laboratory. So you're able to look at individual analysts and their performances and the efficiency with which the laboratory is actually operating at. Moving on to the next, what we consider is that STARLIMS supports the laboratory full data management and security requirements to support all laboratory procedures to make data integrity everybody's responsibility. I think I've listed a few examples, but the most important regarding the audit benefit is that you are able to ensure that you have confidence that the data your lab is working with is in fact solidly integral. You're able to rapidly display laboratory data to an auditor and supply comprehensive audit information to support a spot audit if so required. This means that your audit will go smoothly even if your staff did not have weeks and weeks to prepare. In summary, though, what I'd like to discuss is that I really believe we've been able to successfully demonstrate STARLIMS is designed to support the ALCOA obligations and to facilitate process standardization where we're moving from a manual process to an automated process. The STARLIMS application also interfaces with enterprise-wide systems and also analytical and measurement instrumentation to ensure that we can automate data collection, automate archiving, and automate reporting, thus minimizing the possibility of unintentional transcription errors or potential losses of data, which may occur in a paper-based recording system. The tools that are immediately available within the application provide inherent confidence of the integrity of your data. Furthermore, the tools give you the confidence that the regulatory and safety aspects are effectively managed and met in an efficient and and cost-effective manner for your business. I'd like to say thank you and believe that at this point we can now move on to the Q&A session.
Thank you, Tamara, for your excellent presentation. So we now have the pleasure to introduce our questions and answer session, where today's speaker will answer all your questions. Don't forget, you can still submit your questions using the questions panel in the menu on the right. So let's take a look at the first question. So Tamara, do you already have a list of compatible software, e.g. Empower?
Yes, so STARLIMS, I mentioned a terminology earlier where we support the concept of interoperability. That is that we make ourselves open to communication with other applications and we allow other applications to work with ourselves. But when we take the Empower application, and in fact taking that one step further, Empower from Waters, but we also have Chameleon from Agilent, we in fact have fully integrated applications so that we make the Empower application an integral part of the STARLIMS application. So we have a fully fledged bidirectional interface between both Empower and the Chameleon chromatography data systems.
Great, thank you, Tamara, for answering that one. So the next question, in your opinion, what strategies should companies put in place to make sure they're in cGMP and FDA compliance with regulatory requirements? Oh, let me see. Regulatory requirements and keep data integrity a priority?
Well, in order to keep data integrity a priority, I think it's important to address, firstly, that you need to have the right systems in place. And to have the right systems in place, the first tool we would put forward is to have an integrated application such as STARLIMS. Data integrity in terms of meeting the ALCOA requirements can be addressed in paper-based solutions, but they're difficult to prove. When you're moving towards an automated or electronic-based application such as a LIMS, the ALCOA requirements are inherently met because the tools exist within the application to support those requirements, such as the contemporaneous or the legibility or the original records. And so the first step, I think, in moving towards a data integrity platform is putting a LIMS or a laboratory information management system in place to manage your laboratory data.
Great, thank you, Tamara. So the next question: can audit trail from STARLIMS be switched on and off?
So the audit trail can never be completely switched off, if that makes any sense. You can, though. So STARLIMS is used in both regulated industries and in non-regulated industries. I mean, I've spoken about my own experience in working, for example, in the mining sector versus working in sort of veterinary diagnostics and pharmaceuticals. Now, depending what type of industry you're going to be putting the system in place in, they will have different levels of auditing that's required. So you can never completely turn off the audit trail, but you can certainly switch it on to be recording a much higher level of information than just, for example, date and timestamps. So you can actually set the audit trail to ensure that it includes, comments, it includes electronic signatures, for example, but that can be a switch. So the level at which you switch it on can be made higher or lower, but you can never completely switch the audit trail off. Every transaction that happens within the STARLIMS application, an audit trail record is created by those transactions. So even in the background, a full record is being maintained of each step that's been performed in the system.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tamara, for clearing that one up. Who should be responsible for data integrity in an organisation?
Well, data integrity is ultimately absolutely everybody's responsibility, and I think that's kind of sometimes where the penny is, or where the ball is dropped, is because not everyone believes it's their responsibility. But to be honest, everyone in a company needs to understand the importance of maintaining data integrity, and also to highlight the potential failings of any procedures or management that are actually in place. It's less likely that that there's an inadequate process will go unnoticed if staff actually point out that they believe there are some parts that need to be corrected. So the approach is potentially less costly than having to go through remediation if everybody steps up and says, what do I believe I can change? What can I add to ensure my part in maintaining our business's data integrity?
Perfect. Okay, we've got some time for some more questions. So, Tamara, can you give us an example on a data integrity breach and its impact?
Sure. So many manufacturers, for the repercussions, for example, general repercussions can be things like production stoppages. You can have distribution and import bans. You can have regulatory and approval delays, and importantly, product recall. You'll potentially consider a slide I had right at the beginning of the presentation, where we looked at potential pitfalls. But ultimately, breaches in data integrity can cause two major problems. The one is its effect on on persons. So if you're in a drug manufacturing organization, your products need to be of absolute scrutiny to ensure the health of the consumer. So data integrity can have an effect on human life, and human life can have an effect on or impact on human life can have an effect on a product brand. It can have an effect on share pricing, for example, and on market capitalization. So the effect can be both at a personal and corporate level, can also include, prosecutions becoming more of a thing, where people are facing scrutiny due to the fact that there have been these data integrity breaches. And importantly, if there is actually a data integrity breach, over and above the direct effect on the business, what can also happen for manufacturers and research or clinical research organizations is that you lose the trust and goodwill of the regulator. which means you can actually be subject to even more in-depth scrutiny than you would have previously.
Great, thank you, Tamara. So our next question that's come in is, if a STARLIMS is purchased, will you be responsible for the integration interface with the existing systems?
So the answer is yes. Again, sort of slightly moving back to the comment I made about interoperability. STARLIMS supports all of the modern communication protocols. So, you know, as a company, Abbott Informatics has been in business for in excess of 30 years, which means we've been doing implementations and have got a vast array of, you know, knowledge and experience. But it also means that our product has grown and matured and kind of, you know, gone over the years. So we look sort of, we're quite forward thinking in our approach to business, and we look sort of into the future or ahead based on sort of changes in what we see in technology, and we ensure that our application is always kind of one step ahead so that we can provide for our customer base to ensure that when they might be making changes, for example, to any instruments or to any third-party applications, that we've already got the structures and communication protocols in place built into the application, so that if changes come in that affect them, we've already got the tools to address those particular changes. And a good example of that is STARLIMS is used quite heavily in clinical research organizations, where one of the biggest communication protocols between clinical systems is HL7. And HL7 has recently been re-released with a new version. Now, knowing that we could see that that's coming, within our life sciences application for STARLIMS, we've made an update to the HL7 communication protocol to ensure we're ready for the next HL7 messaging interface and to be ready. So the answer is yes. And we also ensure that we sort of future-proofing our customers' investments to keep the tools needed for future interface requirements.
Great, thank you, Tamara. And a bit more of a specific question here. Can it be programmed to read a PDF in the network and use that data to fill a configurable chart?
So the answer is yes. I mentioned earlier that when we looked at the screen where we had LIMS on the far left-hand side, and then we had STMS and ELN, and we were kind of showing the structure of an integrated application. The STARLIMS STMS, which is our scientific document management system, is more than just a system to store documents. It satisfies that requirement, and we can provide STARLIMS as a fledged STMS application. But what we've done is we've taken the technology behind how STMS is actually designed, and we use that technology to interface to instruments that produce PDFs as their output file. And we use a technology where we essentially train the STMS grabber, which is the tool that pulls a particular filing area looking for these results outputs to be placed. And we pick up these files and we teach the STMS to read by setting up a series of meta tags on an existing PDF. Every time it sees a PDF of a particular structure, it's able to pick out of that PDF based on what you've told it you require in the LIMS, and you're able to pick and put that information into STARLIMS. So it essentially uses it almost as an optical recognition type application, and it reads the PDF. So it doesn't see it as a single image. It actually picks things out, and then it creates an XML string of that information to move that directly into the STARLIMS database, and then at the same time stores the PDF as the actual PDF image directly in the application as well.
Thank you. And another question here for you. Why is the FDA concerned with the use of shared login accounts for computer systems?
When login credentials are shared, a unique individual can't be identified through the login, and the system would then not conform to the cGMP requirement for parts 211 and 212. So the FDA requires that system controls, including documentation controls, be designed in accordance with the cGMP to be compliant to assure product quality. So it specifically references parts 211 and 212. For example, if you implement a document control that ensure that actions are described, you need to be attributable to a specific individual. So to be attributable to an individual, you cannot have a shared login. So, shared logins are a complete no-no where the FDA is concerned, and they do not, they should never be allowed, because you do not want a user to be allowed to modify data that does not belong to them. So you don't want shared logins to be allowed, and you need to make sure that two persons are not sharing an account, because you will never then know who you need to attribute a specific record to.
Thank you, Tamara. And that is all that we have time for today. Any unanswered questions will be responded to via email. So I'd like you all to join me in thanking Tamara McKenna for her time today. As you leave the webinar, a survey will appear on your screen asking you to rate the webinar. Please take a moment to provide your feedback. If now is not a good time for this, the survey will be sent to you shortly via email. If you could complete it when you can, we would greatly appreciate it. So on behalf of European Pharmaceutical Review and Abbott Informatics, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's webinar, and we hope to see you all again soon. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.